أعوذ بالله من الشيطان اللعين الرجيم بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم الحمد لله رب العالمين والصلاة والسلام على سيد الأنبياء وخاتم المرسلين سيدنا ونبينا بالقاسم محمد وعلى أهل بيته الطيبين الطاهرين المعصومين واللعنة الدائمة الباقية على أعدائهم من الآن إلى قيام يوم الدين. Amma ba'd, sisters and brothers in Iman, Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullah. Alhamdulillah, we are into the fifth session of the brief review of Suratu l-Insan, which is also known as Suratu Dahr or Surah Hal-Ata. As I had mentioned earlier, that this is the main part of the surah, right in the middle, is actually a fadilat. It's in the praise of the Ahlul Bayt. And what we have seen till now is actually the preamble to that. And so we looked at the first two ayat where Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala talks about the creation of the human being. Starting with the statement that, remember there was a time when you were not there, as no insan was there, not even worth mentioning, shay'an madhkura. And then he says he created you just from one drop. And that creation itself is very amazing. And he gave you the faculties to receive the message and the guidance of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. And then he talks about the issue in hadaynahu as-sabil. We guided the human being to the right path. Imma shakiran wa imma kafura. Either you will be grateful by following that guidance, or you will be ungrateful by ignoring the guidance that I will send. And then we went on last night to look at the consequences that Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala talks about. That those who ignore the guidance, they basically will face very dark consequences in the hereafter. And then ayat number 5 and 6, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala talks about the people who were grateful to the guidance, they followed it. And Allah describes them as innal abrar, which is a plural of bar, which means a person, a righteous person, a virtuous person who is selfless, doesn't do things with expectation from others, only does it for Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. So this is all theory. Allah says, I created you. The purpose of creation basically is the issue of reaching to that level where Allah's rizā and pleasure would be there. And He says, I gave you the guidance. If you follow it, you are among the shakirin. If you don't follow it, among those who are ungrateful. And then ends with the consequences, but then He wanted to leave us with an example. And this is where Surah Dahr, the main theme of this surah, comes in. Basically, when we look at ayat number 7 to 22, this is the narration of this story of Ali and Fatima and her children and the maid Fizza. So ayat number 7 basically is talking about it. يُوفُونَ بِالنَّظْرِ وَيَخَافُونَ يَوْمًا كَانَ شَرُّهُ مُسْتَطِيرًا. That they fulfill the vow or the pledge that they made with Allah, and they fear the day whose evil will be overwhelming, referring to the day of judgment and the day of Qiyamah. Let us spend the time, talking about these two words, يُوفُونَ بِالنَّظْرِ. To do wafa, to fulfill. And this is where, describing that incident, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, there is a background to that. During the early days of Hijrah and after that, the Muhajirin and the Muslims who had come from outside, you see, Ansar were at home. They had their homes, their own, means of livelihood. So they were settled. But then you have Muhajirin who came in, and they are not really immigrants the way we consider them to be immigrants. They are more or less refugees, if I may use the modern term. So that they didn't have anything when they came. And so the early years of the life of Muhajirin was not that easy financially. There were many, many challenges, to the extent that once the Prophet decided to join the Muhajirin, of course there would be few, each one of them, and link them to one of the Ansar, and this was a brotherhood of a more intense and higher level. Anyone who recites the kalima, they are in that network of brotherhood automatically. They are brethren in faith. But this was more making it more intense, that now there will be responsibilities. And so he gathered the Muhajirin and then asked some of the affluent Ansar to come. And then he will pick one Muhajir and link him with one from Ansar, and he will say, you are brothers of one another, and therefore now the Ansar has to take care of the brother. And this was one way which shows us that Muhajirin were really not in a good condition as far as their finances and their lifestyle is concerned. And I think probably it's a lesson that we have to learn. It's good to read history, but if you cannot, implement that those who are already here, so those who are settled here, you are all Ansar. All the newcomers who are struggling are Muhajirin in a way. We have to have that sense, because we cannot always just say history is history. History is there so that we can learn some lessons of, how to live by the lessons of the history. Just one side note on that event of Muwakhat. It's interesting that the brotherhood bond was between a Muhajir and an Ansar. At the end, there was one Muhajir left out. The Prophet didn't call him. So he complained. He says, Ya Rasulullah, is there a problem with me? What happened? I have been left alone. And that was Ali bin Abi Talib alayhi salatu wasalam. And that's where Rasulullah says to him that, Anta akhi fi dunya wal akhirah. You are my brother in this dunya and the akhirah. Remember, the issue was of brotherhood between Muhajir and Ansar, so that the Ansar can help those who are less fortunate. Here, Rasulullah is Muhajir. Ali is Muhajir. It's the way he's saying, listen, don't compare Ali with your standards. The Ummah has one standard and Ahlul Bayt has a different standard. Not only when it comes to the fazilat, even when it comes to the challenges and the test and trial that they had. And this example actually is there, that Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala is expecting much more from the Prophet and his family than he expects from the ordinary Muslims. And this is where we see that once Hassan and Hussein, very young at that time, and so this is probably, this is definitely after the 4th year of the Hijrah. Exactly which year we are not sure, but according to the narration, this was in Dhul Hijjah, in the 3rd week of Dhul Hijjah. So Dhul Hijjah for us, especially, the events of Ghadir, going all the way to Mubahala, and in between are very important days as far as the Shi'i history is concerned. So this event also took place during that week. Which year, we are not sure about it. And so, Hassan and Hussein became ill. They were very young. And this is where we see that Rasulullah, as the grandfather, decided to come and visit the grandsons. And this process of visiting those who are not feeling well is known as iyadat. Iyadatul mariz is a very highly, recommended deed in Islam, that if you know somebody from the mu'mineen who is not feeling well, it is, recommended to go and visit them. This is a very universal value. Islam also emphasizes that. I'll just go through three hadiths on this issue. Importance of visiting the sick. One is from Imam Muhammad al-Baqir alayhi salatu wasalam, where the Imam says that when a person goes to visit a Muslim who is not feeling well, 70,000 angels will pray for him. And if it is during the daytime, they will continue to pray for him till the day comes to the end. And if the ayadat is done at the night time, they will continue to pray for that fellow until the night comes to the end. And of course, he will have a place in the Jannah. Another hadith from our sixth Imam, again the term 70,000 angels. Sometimes these words, 70, 80 or 70,000, 80,000, is also used in Arabic language more to emphasize a large number. It's not necessarily that the number is fixed as such. 70 angels, and this is actually a narration from sixth Imam, where he says that one day Prophet Musa alayhi salam asked Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala what would be the reward of somebody who visits somebody who is not feeling well. And a similar answer was given to Musa alayhi salam before Islam, that 7 angels will accompany him during that time, praying for his forgiveness all the way till he goes back to his home. And we really are in need of dua of istighfar from others. So if the malaika do the istighfar, so you should probably take a longer route going back home. And then one more hadith from Imam Muhammad al-Baqir. I got confused here. The story of Imam Musa Kazim is with Imam Muhammad al-Baqir, not in the previous hadith, which is a statement of the sixth Imam only. So this is where Imam Muhammad al-Baqir is, narrating that Musa alayhi salam asked this issue, and the answer he got from Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala was, I will assign an angel who will visit him in his grave and be with him and pray for him till the day of Qiyamah. And so this is where we see the importance of the issue of ayadatul marid. And there is no issue of hierarchy, that only the people who are, let's say, lower in the rank should go for the visiting those who are higher in the rank. No, this is Rasulullah sallallahu alayhi wa sallam going to visit his own grandsons. Of course, there is a family relationship there, but this is also an example. According to some narrations, he was not alone. He went with some of his companions. Now, how do we come to this, the ayat, yufuna bin nadhr? When the Prophet was there, one of the things he did in that visitation, he suggested to Amir al-Mu'mineen to do nadhr. That, Allah gives, if Allah gives a speedy recovery to the health of his sons, he will fulfill the nadhr. And this is where I wanted to spend some time just to explain this meaning of nadhr. What does it mean? Basically, nadhr means a pledge that a person makes with Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala to do something or to refrain from something. Now, in our South Asian culture, whether it's Gujarati or Urdu, the term nazar is something else. Nazar, we go to eat, and there is no problem, we can do it. But I'm just clarifying the terms here. In Urdu, sometimes even in Farsi, it's used in that meaning also in some places. Where nazar, basically we are talking about the food which has been prepared for a religious occasion. Whereas in the Shari'i, term, nadhr is nothing to do with food. Nadhr has to do with what we call in Urdu or Farsi would be Mannat ya manta is Gujarati, nahi? Yeah. So what is mannat and manta is nazar in Arabic in the fiqh terminology. So when you do the mannat, that if this happens, I will do this, that is actually the technical Shari'i nazar, not the issue of food. Now when you talk about nazar, there are two kinds of nazar. One is general, unconditional. For example, you just make a nazar that, of course, we are not talking about Ramadan, after Ramadan, that I make nazar for the sake of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala that I'll fast tomorrow. Once you do that nazar, and it's not conditional, it doesn't say if this and that happens. No, just I'm making the nazar that for the sake of Allah, I'm going to fast tomorrow. When you do that nazar, then it becomes mandatory for you to fulfill that. The ayah says, yufuna bin nazar, praising them that they fulfill, do the wafa with the nazar. The second kind, which we are more familiar with that, actually is the nazar which is conditional. Now, an example of unconditional nazar would be people who go for a hajj many times. You cannot always go to the miqat. When we talk about Juhfa or Masjid Shajara, you end up in Jeddah, and Jeddah is already within the miqat. One of the ways of resolving that would be that you do the nazar there. That I'm doing the nazar for the sake of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, that I'll put on my ihram from Jeddah. It's not conditional, it's unconditional. And then you can put on the ihram, and then you can go to Makkah directly. But when it comes to the other nazar, which is more common, the way we do it, is the nazar that which is conditional, where actually we are making a deal with Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. I'm making a nazar that if Allah gives health to my son, then I'll fast for 3 days. Now all these examples are different examples just to give you that, the wide scope in making conditional nazar. Another example would be that if, I make nazar that if Allah gives success to my daughter in her exam, then I'll give $100 to a poor Shi'a. Third example would be I make nazar that if you memorize the Quran, and that you can be anyone, then I'll pay half of your Hajj cost. Do you get examples like that? No? Okay. So there is a lot of flexibility when we talk about the nazar. It doesn't have to be about yourself. It can be about somebody else. It doesn't have to be just with somebody who is in the family. It can even be about somebody who is outside the family. And even sometimes a very unusual situation, a person who is struggling with the addiction of alcohol and wants to kind of restrain himself more, makes a nazar that if I drink alcohol again, then I'll pay $50 in charity. So that guna is there in his old place, and if he's caught, the punishment is there. But this is extra, way of restraining himself. Even for things which are not haram, makruh. It is makruh to laugh when you go to the cemetery, especially during the time of the janazah, because it's not the place where you will be joking and laughing. And so a person who might have that problem, he can make this nazar that if I knowingly laugh at the cemetery, then I will fast for 1 day. Just to, put a bind on himself to get rid of this bad habit. It is not haram. And so when you talk about the issue of nadhr, it could be of different situations. It is just not only about the wish and the desire that we have. It could even be about our own actions and trying to correct ourselves. The conditions of nazr is, number one, that it should be lillah, for the sake of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. This is very essential. It can be done in any language. There's no special niyat for it. And you should of course be baligh and capable to fulfill the nazr. Don't do something which is beyond your capability. And when it comes to the wife's nazr, if it obstructs the husband's wife, then it is not valid without his consent. And ladies do many nazrs, so they have to realize this issue. Now, if somebody does a nazr, and it was, let's say, conditional, and the condition was fulfilled. It was, let's say, between him and Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. He had a wish, and it came. And he didn't do it. Or things happen that he is not now capable of doing it. Then what is the remedy for that? The kafara would be, feeding 10 poor persons. And we are talking about, feeding them. It's not just giving, one kind of ration. Or clothing 10 poor people. And if that is not possible, then fasting 3 days consequently. So if somebody had done, let's say, a nazar of, spending money for a cause, and now he cannot do that, then the kafara of violation of that nazar would be to fast for 3 days continuously. Basically, it's when we have issues in our life and when we want the help of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, one of the common methods is, of course, to pray to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, to do dua. But nazar is actually a step even beyond that, where you are making a kind of a deal with Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. That Allah, if you fulfill this desire or wish that I have, I'm committed to do so and so, after that. If the dua or the wish is fulfilled, then you have the obligation. If it is not fulfilled, then, the obligation would not be there. So going back to this story, based on the suggestion of the Prophet, Ali alayhi salam made the nazr that if Allah grants a speedy recovery to his son's health, he will fast for 3 days. Following him, Bibi Fatima salawatullah alayha made a similar nazr. And looking at their example, Fizza the maid also made the same nazr. And this is where we see the issue of, living by example and promoting good habits among those who are in your circle. Fizza was not a family member. She works for Bibi Fatima, but she was so much impressed with the akhlaq of Sayyida and her sense of justice. This is amazing that, she has been brought in to help Fatima to Zahra. But she says to her that one day you will rest and I will work. And one day I will rest and you will work. When we talk about, relationships between master or slave or employer and employee, these are the things that we have to keep in mind. And this is where you see that Fidda, being a servant and a maid, goes along with this example. And there is a very interesting indirect reference to her also in this entire surah, in Surah Dahr. Inshallah, we'll come to that when we go through the details. We'll stop here. As I said, I'm not going to describe the story in one evening. We're going, step by step, just to also learn lessons from it. What I would like to do is now go back to the issue. As I said, at the end, we will end with some of the masail about Jamaat prayers. There were a couple of questions, and one of them was from the ladies about the tahajjud prayer, Salatul Layl, Namaz al-Shab as we call it. Whether it can be said before midnight or not, because the time of Namaz al-Shab is from midnight to Fajr. It is better to do after midnight, closer to the Fajr time. But if a person realizes that he or she will not be able to get up before Fajr long enough to do Namaz al-Shab, or they will not be able to stay long, after Namaz al-Shab, then Namaz al-Shab can be done even ahead of time, before its actual time. Because there is flexibility when it comes to nafila and mustahab prayers. One of the other issues that I wanted to talk tonight, we looked at the different rulings about Jamaat prayers, especially between the Imam and the Ma'moom. Just to, in 2 sentences, just summarize it. When it comes to the actions, the Ma'moom must follow the Imam, not go ahead of the Imam. When it comes to recitations, when it comes to the surahs, if you remember the ruling, when it comes to Zuhr and Asr, they have to be silent. And when it comes to Fajr and Maghrib and Isha, if they can hear the voice, they have to be silent. If they cannot hear the voice, even faintly, then they have the option of reciting the surah or the tasbih. When it comes to all other zikr, the ma'mumin don't have to exactly follow the imam. The dua of qunut could be different between what the imam is reciting and what the ma'mumin is reciting. But as I said, you have to make sure you are with the imam in the action in the second stage. It shouldn't be that your dua is so long that the imam is, already in ruku and getting up for the ruku and you are still in your qunut. So the du'as could be different. Even the zikrs that imam chooses could be different from the one that you are choosing for yourself. One more thing about Namaz-e-Jamaat, since we are in the month of Ramadan, just a very quick look at this issue about the hukum about praying in Jamaat form. These are slides from 2017, classes that I on a weekly basis. When it comes to Namaz-e-Jamaat, for the daily prayers, it is highly recommended. When it comes to Jummah prayers, it is wajib. You can't have Jummah prayers furada. And in Nafila and Sunnat prayers, Jamaat form is forbidden. So you can't have Sunnat namaz in the Jamaat form. Basically, all these prayers and the which were essentially Sunnat and Nafila. And it's important to look at that underlined statement. The namaz which were originally and essentially Sunnat, you are not allowed to do that in the Jamaat form. And so the only exception is Namazul Istisqa, which is prayed when there is drought or no rain has come for a long time and people are suffering. There is a special way of doing it, and that is to be done in the Jamaat form, and that is not a wajib namaz. So there is an exception to the rule. So you will ask me, then what happens to Namaz Eid? The answer is up there. In the ghaibat it has become sunnat. But essentially it would be wajib for when the conditions are fulfilled. And therefore we can still do it. So there is a slight, flexibility about the namaz which were not essentially sunnat but became sunnat because of the element of ghaibat of the imam. You can still do that in the Jamaat form. The Prophet was actually asked about it, especially the nafila prayers of the daily namaz, and he was asked, أيما أفضل الصلاة في بيتي أو الصلاة في المسجد? Not referring to the wajib daily namaz. The question was about what would be the best of the prayers in my home or in the masjid. And the Prophet says, لا ترى إلى ألا ترى إلى بيتي ما أقربه إلى المسجد? Do not you see my house which is so close to the masjid? Yet for me فلأن أصلي في بيتي أحب إلي من أن أصلي في المسجد. When it comes to sunnat prayers, it is more preferable for me to pray at my home than to pray in the masjid. Why? إلا أن تكون صلاة unless it is a wajib namaz. And this is actually from the Sunni sources. In another statement, the Prophet says, إِذَا قَضَى أَحَدُكُمْ صَلَاطَهُ فَلْيَجْعَلْ لِبَيْتِهِ نَصِيبًا. Once you're done your wajib namaz in the mosque, give some, opportunity for your house. Because فَإِنَّ اللَّهَ جَاعِلٌ فِي بَيْتِهِ مِنْ صَلَاتِهِ خَيْرًا. When you do the nafila prayers inside your home, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala sends khair and barakat and goodness there. And so this is there even in the books of Ahl Sunnah wal Jama'ah. And this is where we come to the issue of tarawih prayers. The reason why we do not agree with that, because it is, number one, a sunnat prayer. And the sunnat prayer cannot be done in the Jamaat form. And that is the reason why we actually disagree with the issue of tarawih. We are not against the nafila prayers done especially during the nights of the month of Ramadan. I would actually say that sometimes we miss out just because we say tarawih is not acceptable like in our fiqh, then we forget the entire process of nafila prayers that we have especially for the month of Ramadan. Besides the daily nafilas that we have attached to the daily prayers, in the month of Ramadan, it is highly recommended from the 1st to the 20th of the month to do 20 rakat, 2 rakat each, so 10 times. From 1st to the 20th. And from 21st to the end of the month, you will increase the numbers of rakat, and it is 30 rakat. If you calculate all these, sunnat prayers at the nights of the month of Ramadan, with the 100 rakat on the 3 nights of Layali al-Qadr, you come to 1,000 rakat during the entire month for the nafila prayers. So we have that. And sometimes when in saying that we do not believe in tarawih, we even forget the actual sunnat prayers which have been recommended for the month of Ramadan. And we have to keep in mind that, we can even use that opportunity. Instead of doing it as sunnat 2 rakat 10 times for the, let's say, 20 days, you can even use that time in order to do your qadha prayers. Of course, not 2 rakat, no? I'm just saying you use that time and the energy and the spirit that you have, that instead of doing the nafila, do the qadha prayers if you have. So Zuhr, Fajr, Zuhr, Asr, Maghrib and Isha, and try to do it so many times that you come to that number close to 20. And then 30 during the last 10 days. Huh? inshallah. Another point of, just to have this information, tarawih was not done by the Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam, and there is no dispute about this, nor by Abu Bakr. So till 13th year of the Hijrah, tarawih, means this sunnat namaz in Jamaat form, was not being done. It was started by the second Khalifa. And there is actually a narration from him where he says, إني أرى لو جمعت هؤلاء على قار واحد كان أمثل. One day he went to the masjid and saw everybody, doing their sunnat nafila prayers alone, individually, furada. And he said, I think if I combine them in a collective, congregational form, behind one qari, one imam, that would be ideal. And then ثُمَّ عَظَمَ. So he decided to do that. And he appointed Ubay bin Ka'b as the imam for Tarawih mosque. وَالنَّاسُ يُصَلُّونَ بِصَلَاةِ قَارِئِهِمْ. And then, people started doing that way. When Umar saw it, he says, نِعْمَةُ الْبِدْعَ هَذِهِ. This is a good bid'ah. So he acknowledged that this is a bid'ah not done by Rasulullah. Started it, but he classified it as a good bid'ah. And that is why we don't actually agree with that format. Let me end with what did Amir al-Mu'minin do when his khilafat started? Amir al-Mu'minin had many, many challenges. And he could not, deal with all the challenges. In those 5 years with, 3 battles of major situations, so he had to basically prioritize issues that he wanted to handle. And the issue of tarawih was not really at the top of the items. There is a narration in our book from our sixth Imam when he was asked about these nafila prayers in the masjid. The Imam actually says that when Amir al-Mu'minin went to Kufa, and the month of Ramadan came and people gathered for tarawih, Amir al-Mu'minin sent his son Hassan bin Ali to announce to the people, لا صلاة في شهر رمضان في المساجد جماعة. Means during that night time in the month of Ramadan, there will be no Jamaat prayers in the masjid. People couldn't take it. They had been used to this system, and so فلما سمع الناس مقالة الحسن بن علي صاحوا وعمراء وعمراء. They said, oh, you are demolishing the sunnah of Umar. And so this is where he came back home. He told Amir al-Mu'minin that this is what people's reaction is, and they started having this cry. And so this is where Amir al-Mu'minin said, just leave them alone. This is the simple translation I would do. It's not that he agreed with it, but he realized that this was not a top priority as far as reformation is concerned. He would have probably dealt with it later on if the time had allowed. But this is where we see that, the difference that we have on this issue is just because of the nature of these nafila prayers, which cannot be done in Jamaat form. Salawat.